Welcome to the MyTech Toolbelt podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Brenda. And this is a podcast where we highlight educators who innovate, engage, and inspire through the use of technology. So today on the MyTech Toolbelt podcast, we are so excited to welcome Jessica Solano, a third grade teacher from Florida. She has been using Nearpod for about 4 years and is very excited to share it with you. She has some great ideas on many ways to use Nearpod in the classroom. Jessica was also named the Florida Teacher of the Year in 2017, so she will also tell us about what that process was like and her quest to always improve her teaching. Jessica is so inspirational, I can't tell you just how wonderful this interview is. So, without further ado, our interview with Jessica Solano. We are so excited today to welcome Jessica Solano. She is the 2017 Florida Teacher of the Year.
That's right.
And we are just over the top excited to have her with us today. And she is going to speak to us about Nearpod.
Nearpod. I love Nearpod. Nearpod's one of my favorites. So I'm excited to have you here today, Jessica. Thank you. Thank you for coming all the way from Florida via Zoom technology. So Jessica, tell us, you just finished school Thursday. You said Thursday before Memorial Day weekend was your last day with kiddos, and then Friday was your teacher cleanup day. So you're free. You're on summer vacation.
Yes.
And the first day of summer vacation, you decide to
spend it with us.
These goofballs who are trying to do this podcast thing. So tell us about, you teach third grade and you teach 3 subjects. What?
I teach third grade math, science, and social studies. So I get to be out of the whole third grade reading world, which is kind of nice. But we bring in reading into the classroom, but I get to do mostly my love, which is math.
So tell us a little bit about your school and the demographic of kids that you serve at your particular school site.
Yeah, so I'm at Highlands Grove, and it's in Lakeland, Florida, in Polk County. It's a really unique school in that it just recently, this past year, became a Title I school. It's a neighborhood school, and it's actually kind of in a suburban area. So we have some students who live right in that neighborhood. And then we also have a good majority of our students that are also bused in from about 30 minutes. And they're living in a little bit more needier neighborhood. We have a little bit of a harder time engaging their families just because of the distance between our school and where they live. So that is interesting, bringing that in and that dynamic. But it's a K-5 school, and we have about 800 kids at our school. So in third grade, we have 7 teachers, and we do departmentalize at our school, which is really unique and definitely very powerful. So even all the way down to first grade, they have students who are in one class for reading and writing, maybe even social studies, and then they go to another class for science and math. In our class in third grade, we kind of work in that same way where I teach 2 2-hour math blocks, and then I have 1 hour to teach science and social studies, while the other kids are traveling to a reading class or to go to a gifted class. So it's really neat in that as a teacher, you get to hone in on what you really enjoy teaching, and you can become an expert in that content area instead of trying to divide yourself among every single content area. So
I think I'm a big fan of that kind of block scheduling all the way down. And I would love to see what your block schedule looks like someday, because I have other schools that I work with that are like, we can't do block schedule in kindergarten. Like, they can't switch classes. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure they can. I've seen it done, and I know teachers that are doing it. So
is this a Florida thing, or is just this your school?
Well, and there's other schools in Florida who are doing it, but it's really up to the principal. So, and this is the first school I've been to, and this is my third school that does it this way. And I've seen it around our district. It's usually that they try it in like 4th or 5th grade. They don't want to start in kindergarten. But our principal has been fantastic. The principal before him is absolutely amazing. And they really put a lot of trust into the teachers that they hired and let them take on the kind of structure that they thought would work. And if it doesn't work, then we talk about it and we restructure. But we're given that freedom to decide, are we going to team teach? Are we going to just be completely self-contained? I think that helps too. It gets you a lot more buy-in from the teacher's end.
For sure. I want to ask one more question, and then I want to pivot a little bit. So the technology at your school site, will you tell us a little bit about what technology is currently available?
Absolutely. So I was actually really fortunate to be given a class set of iPads. Our district has started this program called the Model Instructional Classroom Program, and they have selected different teachers throughout our district to have a class set of iPads. The teacher has an iPad Pro, and we also get an Apple TV. And so that's one way that I've been using a lot of Nearpod and a lot of other technologies because it is one-to-one in my classroom. But just until this year, when we were funded with Title I funds, we actually now were able to get an iPad cart for each grade level. So not every single classroom in our school is a one-to-one classroom, but we've been using Nearpod for several years. So that's really nice. And then it's kind of helped me see two different ways. I have classes that are using Nearpod only 5 devices, and then I have classes like mine that have one-to-one devices, and we can still use Nearpod to make an impact on student learning.
Excellent. I feel like that your school is not a whole one-to-one school, and that's another thing that comes up a lot when I work with schools is, oh, we can't do this because we're not one-to-one. We can't do this because we only have 5. And that's not the case. And you'll tell us more how Nearpod can become a tool that will allow you to only have 5 iPads in the classroom and still make that impact.
Okay, so if you could just let me know, basically, what is Nearpod? And also, what did your classroom look like before Nearpod and then after Nearpod?
That is the question I get all the time. What is Nearpod? What are you talking about? You use it all the time. So the best way that I could explain it is that it's an interactive presentation tool that takes your regular PowerPoint from being something you control and only on your screen to being shared on your students' devices, and you still have that control to move them. But it's not even just the content, it's giving them the ability to really engage in the lesson. So it has features in it like Draw It, where they're able to express their thinking and then submit it to you. There's quizzes, there's open-ended questions, there's virtual field trips. You can send them to websites and pull them back out. It just is a way that you can deliver content in a way that engages your students. They're able to collaborate with each other in real time. They're able to share their work anonymously, which bolsters their bravery, and they're able to really engage in that type of rigorous thinking without worrying about people making fun of them. And then it also really just gives you that opportunity to get a pulse on your classroom to see what are they learning and are they really understanding it. So before I had Nearpod, I definitely used a lot more paper-based assessments. If I was finding things that I wanted to build background knowledge, I would use videos, and I'd have like a million tabs open on my computer, and I'd have to click on each one. And so, okay, this is a video of Rome, and this is a document I want you to see. And it was really hard and took up a lot of time because every second is so precious in the classroom. It would take time for me to go from tab to tab or to find everything and put it together. And I was finding I was losing that momentum in my classroom. Plus, by the time my kids left and I had their exit tickets, it took a minute to go through and try to really see who's understanding what. And I just feel those little moments of time that we spend doing busy work, it actually really takes away from the impact that the lesson could have. So after bringing Nearpod into my classroom, I have everything right there in front of me. My teacher screen immediately will show me their quiz results and how they're doing. So I can go up to a student who's 2 questions in and missing both questions. I can stop and conference with him and talk about the misconceptions he's having without waiting for him to finish a 10-question quiz and then realizing he doesn't get it. I can show them, I can take them to Rome, I can take them to Greece, I can take them to Times Square. It just gives me so many more tools now that I didn't have before. And my students are locked in and engaged the entire time. I'm not losing anyone. I just really can't talk enough about it. I love it. And it's hard to really even sum up what it does because it does so much.
And you can put these things in order that you want to view them in. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yes. So like when you're designing a lesson, I tell teachers it's kind of as if you would imagine you have a stack of interactive sticky notes and you're able to put them out in the order that you want. But if you don't like it, just move them around and put them here. And if you think of something on the fly, you can add another sticky note and you can add it right in. So it's really, really exciting. Some teachers also who are just starting with Nearpod and maybe they're used to always having their PowerPoints or their smart lessons. What they're worried about is that I've just put in all this work into building this PowerPoint and I've got to recreate it all in Nearpod, and you don't actually have to. I love that Nearpod has where you can just drop in a PowerPoint and then you can put in those little interactive features in there. So you really don't have to recreate the wheel. It's a great way to kind of get your feet wet and start learning about the program by doing it that way.
Yeah, it's a great way to start, like beginning teachers or new teachers or teachers that have been teaching for 20 or 30 years and they have all of that stuff kind of put together. They just could, drop it in. So it's what is that, low risk entry?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What was the learning curve when you first brought in Nearpod? Because you've been using Nearpod for a few years now. What do you find in the beginning of the year with the learning curve of the kids, or what was the kids' learning curve, and then what was you and or your colleagues' learning curve with Nearpod?
It really wasn't too bad. It's pretty intuitive. You can bring in little pieces as you want. So when I first started, I just really used the Draw It tools, or I even just used the pre-packaged Nearpod Lessons that are already in the store. That really helps you kind of be exposed to these different features without having to try it out and not really be sure what it's going to look like. For my students, I love that they don't have to log in. They just have to put in the code. So getting my students, they already have their login information that's provided from our district, but that's part of that time that you have to spend logging in, and I don't type my password in right, and hold on, Miss Solano has to come over, and it just eats up at the lesson. So all they have to do is type in this code that's already generated by Nearpod every time you start a new lesson. They just type in the code, and then they're in. So I like to, with our iPads, it just saves their name, so that way I can see who it is. So they really don't even have to do that part after they've done it once. It was pretty easy for them. I love how they don't have to control it, especially in a live lesson, where if I flip it and it's a student-paced lesson, you just click the arrow. It's pretty easy. If it's a draw, they just use their finger and they draw right on it. I think really the most difficult part was maybe the open-ended questions and getting them to type, because they're third graders and they're still learning. But other than that, even the virtual reality with being in the middle of a city and they're trying to move their iPads, it's really, really easy to use. And I've never really had a student tell me I have no idea what to do, because it's so easy to understand and use.
That's so great.
What about your learning curve?
Yeah, so my learning curve, I don't feel like it was too difficult. There were some things I wanted to try. I remember going to our Florida Technology Conference and running into the CEO of Nearpod, and he had said, "Have you tried the virtual field trips?" And that was one I was a little bit hesitant on, the virtual field trips. And also I was thinking, what am I going to show my kids? I don't really know. It might take away from the lesson. And so he said, no, I really, really encourage you to look at that. And he showed me, of course, on his iPad there that they had. So I went right back, added one into the lesson, and seeing my kids hold up their iPads and move around the room, and the, whoa, oh my goodness, the factor was so worth it. And so I absolutely love it. I sometimes will even use it as brain breaks, but a lot of times we use it as a way to talk about where is math in the real world. Also for science and social studies this year, we actually went, we're talking about the Underground Railroad, and we went to one of the stops there. So one of the older houses there. And it was pretty exciting to see that. But that was one there's really just been pieces that I've been unsure of, and how am I going to use it in my lesson? But once you just dive in and do it, you see that it fits right in with what you're already planning on doing.
So your school has a site license?
They do. No, but I started with my own license. So I had done, and I think that's what is so great about Nearpod, is that they're not trying to necessarily aim just for the top, the district. They want teachers to buy into it and then go ask their principal in their districts to sign up. So they have that teacher buy-in already. So I had heard about it and then tried it and then convinced our school to go in for it too.
Well, and it's really not that expensive. So there is a free version for teachers that will give you a lot. I mean, a lot of teachers, I think, can find that they can do almost everything they need to do in the free version. Then they can go to the paid version, which I believe is $9.99 a month. And then there might be a version, and don't quote me on this, we'll fact check and put it in our show notes, but there might be a version where you pay for the year up front that has a little bit of a discount. Right. And then a site license for a school is very, very reasonable. And I'm not going to say the price because with my luck, they'll change it, but it is extremely reasonable. If you have at least 8 teachers that are interested in the 8 to 10 ballpark, it will absolutely pay for itself without each teacher having to pay for their own license. And so I feel like if you've got 8 teachers at your school site or more that are interested in this, you should go for the site license as a district or as a school. And then the data that can come out of it for you guys as teachers is instant, but it's also historical. when you have that paid version. And then it's available to your administration so that they can see what's happening too. One of the most exciting things for me about seeing schools that I work with adopt Nearpod is, especially when, like you said, there's 7 third grade teachers. Mm-hmm. If you have a lesson, you can share that lesson with the other. Like if somebody else, I can't imagine that you teach all math, social studies, and science, right?
Right.
Right now, for all of those kids, right? So there's another teacher out there who's also teaching social studies. Mm-hmm. So you guys could collaborate on your lessons and share them back and forth, so that you're both not doing the same thing. You're not spinning the wheel twice on the exact same thing. So that library, that school library, where you can share internally and then even externally with the broader community, I think is one of the best features that I like about Nearpod.
I completely agree. And I love too that I can put it in there, and if another teacher wants to add a little bit or take something out, she can download it into her library and it's editable. Yeah. So they don't have to do the exact same lesson I did, but they also don't have to recreate the entire thing either.
Right. Even if you took, 75%. Right.
Right. I know. 50%. Well, and even across grade levels, and we have students who are very advanced, and then we have students that are farther behind. And if we could collaborate, first through fifth grade, kindergarten through fifth grade, and have those lessons available, that would be so beneficial to our students. We actually just started a family engagement team at our school. And one way that we're using Nearpod outside of content is to be able to engage our families better. And so we have different Nearpod lessons that a teacher is uploading into our school library for different events like open house. So how can you get your parents to come in and sit and go through a Nearpod to make it more engaging? That way they're not just sitting and listening to all the rules and procedures and everything, but they're actually engaging in something their kids will be using for learning. So that's really great, that especially for our teachers who are not very sure about what to do with Nearpod, it's already a lesson right there and they've shared it and it's there forever in our school library. So love that.
That's awesome.
That is really great.
So do you use Nearpod in all of your classes that you teach, or do you find that it works better for some and not others?
No, I use it for all of it, really, especially with my science and social studies lessons, because it is a smaller block of time. And because I have a lot more experience with teaching math, I found that it's been an incredible resource to have the Nearpod library there. So they just added the PhET simulations. So when we're talking about energy and kinetic energy and potential energy, they have simulations right there. So that's helped with a lot of experiments in my class. I have the materials there to do experiments, but we can also do them on Nearpod. And then social studies, I feel like they have great lessons already in there, but also using those virtual field trips, using the chance to give those open-ended questions and quizzes has been really helpful too.
I love it. I can't tell you how much I love Nearpod. Have I said that before?
I think once or twice.
We love it.
I do. I'm a big fan. It's on my sticker. I got my sticker on my iPad. My Nearpod shirt. I didn't wear my Nearpod shirt today. That's what I should have done.
What about grading, like through Nearpod? Do they have a grading module or something?
Well, I know that they have different businesses that they work with, like Schoology or different ones. And I know that Polk County doesn't currently use it. What I have done, though, for different assessments that I've given through Nearpod, I've split my screen. So I have that Nearpod window up, and then I also have my grade book up on the other window. And I'm able just to quickly type in the grades right there. So that's really nice. And it does save those results. So I can go in, a month or two from now, if a parent says, hey, what is this quiz that they took? I can still pull it up. And that was one thing I was concerned about when I started using more technology, is how are my parents going to know how their kids are doing if I'm only going paperless, if I don't have anything there. So it gives a good balance. I have the Nearpod results there, but if there's ever something, if there's maybe a grade below a C, I can always take a clip of it and send it through Class Dojo or email it to them, and they're still able to see how their kids are doing.
And I think Nearpod was really more for like a formative assessment tool versus a summative assessment tool.
Right.
But I'm thinking about with a paid version, mm-hmm. the student-paced modules, the student-paced lessons, Nearpod lessons, that whether you've created it or whether you've used it. Are you using that? You said you might be using a little bit of that. And can you tell us a little bit about that, how it looks in your classroom?
Yeah, absolutely. it looks different in different ways. I have when I do small groups, I'm leading a Nearpod lesson with those 6 students that I have on my small group table. But oftentimes I also will put a Nearpod up with a student paste code from a different topic or a topic that we've already learned. And so they can click through there on their own. They're able to go back and forth and revisit things, but they also submit their responses. So then later on, I can go into that lesson and look at their responses. Anytime I have a substitute, I'm able to give them depending on the substitute that I have, some substitutes are very comfortable with Nearpod and they just go ahead and do the live lesson, but I also can use the subplans with Nearpod and that produces a student paste code. So the sub really just has to monitor and answer questions while my students go through the Nearpod by themselves. Also, if my kids are absent from school, that's something I can send home just the link. I could put on my website. I could send it through our messaging system, but the students have it right there as well. So it's really pretty flexible. And they love that they have the code. If they didn't finish it, they can come back the next day, put the code back in, and it picks up right where they left off, and they're able to finish it. So that's something that I've noticed with other programs that especially if it's a quiz or something, they have already put in maybe half of it and then we run out of time. And if we click out, they're going to lose all that information. So Nearpod doesn't do that. So that's nice.
That's so great. And I love the new feature that just came on in the last probably 3 months is the fact that you as the teacher can now record that self-paced one. And so that literally happened as I was teaching Nearpod to my graduate students who are teachers in the classroom. And all of a sudden I had set my whole Nearpod up. And then when I went to teach the lesson, all my students are on Zoom like we are now, right? So it's an online course, but we're live. And I was flipping through a Nearpod lesson. So they're looking at it on their screen and I'm looking at it on my screen. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, there's like this recording button here. And I was like, that wasn't here when I literally like a few days ago when I set up the Nearpod, it was not there. And so I did have one student absent and I had gone through and was able to send her the self-paced one. So I thought that was really cool. I had to go back and re-record, but
it's nice that you can then give them instructions, right? That they missed that day.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Right.
And it's just great for like your small group stuff, right? Like if they're over there, you can give them those instructions.
I love it. I know. They're always updating Nearpod. I feel like every month or so, there's something else that comes out. I saw that. I have not used it yet, but I wonder if for my kids that maybe might click right through, you could put in like a secret mystery word in there somewhere. You're saying you had to really listen to the whole thing to understand what that word was. And then you get your bonus of hero bucks, whatever it is.
Your extra points for the day.
Sneaky.
Yeah.
I know.
Points.
Gotta be sneaky.
Marbles in the jar, whatever that is.
Right.
No, I think that's great. And it might slow them down a little bit too.
Right.
No, I know that they're all constantly working on that. So, Jessica, can you tell us what impact that you've seen Nearpod have on your students, on your teaching, and maybe on your colleagues that are also using Nearpod?
Yeah, definitely. I've noticed that I love bringing in technology and I love bringing in new things and learning new things, but especially with some of the teachers that I work with, it's not always something that everyone wants to just jump in and do. It does take a lot of work to really learn a new system. So what I've been told and what I've kind of seen is that sometimes when we're trying to integrate technology, the level of rigor of our teaching goes down because we're trying to learn something new. And what's so great about Nearpod is that it doesn't have to be that way. You can still have a rigorous lesson that meets the depth of the standard, but bring in pieces of technology that are engaging that help you meet that depth. So I always try when I'm creating a lesson or when I'm looking at a lesson is asking myself, how am I going to engage my students in that 21st century learning and have a rigorous lesson where they're going to be challenged and they're going to be exposed to new thinking. So when I'm doing that, I will always start with the standard, and I share with my colleagues to always start with the standard and have it broken down in a way that kids can understand, and then have them be accountable for that. So when they're going through the lesson, rating themselves and using different pieces of technology like the drawings and the slideshows as ways for them to constantly be engaged and not just sitting and getting. Mm-hmm. With my students, the impact that it's had on them, I have so many students that I feel like maybe would not ever have been exposed to an opportunity to visit different countries or different places if not for the virtual realities. especially the explorations that they have. It really is very engaging with getting them to go to different pieces and interact with different parts that they have there. I have one little boy who had said, I've never even been outside of Polk County. Wow. And here I am taking him to Greece, and he's talking about how blue the domed roofs are, and taking him to Times Square, and we're talking about New York City and Waikiki Beach and all these different places that he really felt like he went to because he had the opportunity through that.
That gives me chills.
I know, right?
I almost got chills.
I love it. And imagine that potential that it puts in them to say, it's right here. I could do this. I could totally get to that one day. I really want to go see this for myself. And then I also have students who, like me, I was extremely shy as a kid. I would never raise my hand. So I have some students in my class, one little girl, Emily, this year, who would never raise her hand. And honestly, there were times I kind of forgot that she was there because she was so quiet. I take attendance and the kids, I don't think Emily's here. And she's, I'm here. But so it's so great about Nearpod because we're constantly, when I give them a question, they have a chance to draw out their answer, explain it, or talk with a partner. But when they submit their work, I'm able to share their work back out, but it takes the name off of their work. Mm-hmm. So when my students send in something, they're able to engage in that mathematical discourse. So I remember there was one time with Emily that we had all sent it in. And Emily had done a fantastic job on her distributive property equation. And it was really creative how she had thought about it. So I sent it back out. It does not say Emily on it. Then I had them talk about it. What do you think? And not tell me how this is right or tell me how this is wrong. You still have that rigor that's there, letting them talk about it and support their evidence. And I was watching Emily because she wasn't really listening to her partner. She was looking around the room and trying to hear what people were saying about her work. And she was just so excited and so proud, even though I didn't have to say, this was Emily's work. Right. She felt confident enough to say, okay, I know what I'm doing because their feedback to me is very good feedback on what was going well. And then even what I can do to make it better. They're coming up with ideas because of my work. So you got to see kids' confidence grow in learning because they had a chance to expose their thinking to a bigger audience than just their one partner that's sitting next to them. So that's pretty powerful. I can't really talk enough about the impact that it has on, culturally, academically, confidence. I mean, it really is a well-rounded, well thought out program.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. What a great story.
I know. It really did give me goosebumps.
I know.
When I hear that kind of stuff, it's like, that's the impact that we are able to bring to them. And yes. and we couldn't have done that without that technology, period.
Right. And teachers need to think that. It's not just, I got to learn one more thing. We need to think about the kids that we have in our classroom. And this is a new generation. And you have to stretch yourself in order to really reach them in a way that's going to help them grow. Because we have grown. We're here. We're adults. And we have more to learn. But it's not about us.
Right. It's totally about the kids. Totally about the kids. So, well, thank you for sharing that. I think one of the other things that we had talked about offline before was if this lesson will work better using a pencil and paper, by all means, use the pencil and paper, or use movement or bodies or kinesthetic learning or hands-on. Like Nearpod will not replace every single lesson that you have, right? Or technology isn't going to replace every single lesson that you have. There are going to be times when, in order to fully engage these students, that there are other ways to do that. This is just one that is really powerful and can do this really, really great things within its scope. And so you had said that before, and I want to make sure that we say that, because I don't want teachers out there to think, oh my gosh, the Nearpod is I'm just going to do every single lesson is just going to be a Nearpod. Because that is not how you run your classroom. I can't even imagine with as active as third graders are, and I have a fourth grader, so I know you can't, that's not realistic. Lessons are pushed through Nearpod, and then your kids still handwrite things, and your kids still build things, and your kids still, submit worksheets when that's appropriate. And so I think, and maybe they don't, I don't know if your kids don't do worksheets, but
no, you're absolutely right.
Right? So there's things, right, that they still do that Nearpod does not replace, but Nearpod can enhance and extend the learning in a way that we were never able to do before this world of technology came. So anyways, that's my soapbox. Sorry. I just wanted to make sure that we said that, because I have not found in the 20 years that I've been in EdTech a magic bullet.
Yes.
Right.
what I have found are really, really great opportunities for us to engage and enhance the learning.
Tools.
I don't know. In our tool belt. I don't know.
And
Just
your
thinking.
tool belt.
It's in our tech tool
Like,
belt. And Nearpod is one of them.
no, I completely agree. And I think when you have to think about that with Nearpod, especially like when I'm trying to submit a lesson plan or trying to share with other teachers, it really shouldn't run just like slide 1, slide 2, slide 3. There needs to be breaks in there where kids talk to each other.
Right.
And balance having a device, having technology, and having a conversation.
Right. Because, if that sparks a conversation, a separate conversation, and you go off on a tangent, but it's an important tangent,
right?
Really, that's the most important thing. It's not just getting through the lesson.
No,
right?
Deeper learning.
Right.
Yes.
And speaking of lessons, you have graciously shared a Nearpod lesson with us and a lesson plan with us. Will you just give us a little snapshot so that people will be inspired to go to our website and download and look at those and potentially even use those or manipulate those? So will you just tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. So the lesson that's on your website, it's a lesson that's when we were our very first lesson of learning about fractions. So we were using really a geometry standard where they have to partition shapes into equal parts. And we're pulling on what they learned in second grade. So it's a lesson about identifying halves. So it starts off with their hook, which is using the collaborate feature. It's similar to Padlet. Before Nearpod had that, I was using Padlet a lot, but it's a virtual sticky note type of piece that they have there. So the question was, what is a half? And they could type in what they thought a half was. They could put in pictures it has like a search engine there using Google. They'll drop in the pictures. And so the students get different ideas and they're able to like each other's comments. And again, everything is still anonymous. So they are feeling confident and brave enough to do that. And then I can sort them based on the most liked. So then we come up with a class-wide definition of what halves are. So that with how it's structured, I try to structure it in a way that the students are leading the learning and not listening to me tell them, this is what a half is. It's very exploratory. So we have that. And then the next slide actually takes into a 3D object. And so it's a Mayan temple. And the students are able to use their finger on the iPad to flip it upside down, zoom in, turn it around. Like they have their own personal little Mayan temple right there. And so with that, they were asked to identify where halves are on this temple. And so that was really interesting because they immediately went for the easy ones. Okay, the stairs are going down the middle, so I have my 2 halves. They could flip it upside down. It was just a blank square, so they split it in half. But at the top, where all the staircases met, it really created fourths. But students were identifying those as halves. So they're saying, oh, this is a half, 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 half. And so just like we were just talking about with getting your students to engage in conversation, along with the technology, we actually ended up, it's a great opportunity to have a debate. So in our class this year, when we did it, we had about half the class that said that is halves, and about half the class that said, no, it's not halves. And so our class divided. They had to put the technology down, have a conversation about what it is. These are representative to debate with each other and really pull out their thinking. Yeah, it was awesome. They love that. So and it was interesting is that at this point, they have what they know for second grade and what they learned in second grade, but they don't have the vocabulary yet to tell me why it's not a half and it's fourths. But they could tell me, well, in the other parts, it had only 2 parts and this has more than 2 parts. And so it's that great way of them pushing into that new learning without me going through and saying, these are halves, these are fourths, this is the denominator. So it's a really great discussion. They're leading it the whole time. So after we've really spent a lot of time really tearing apart that 3D object, I took them into what I feel is the most powerful part of our learning, which is being able to evaluate your learning. So there's a GIF on that slide that goes 3, 2, 1. And so if you're saying, you know what, I think after what we've just talked about, I think I'm at a level 3, you're saying that I can teach this to someone. I am so confident in what I'm doing that I know that I could master a challenge and I could teach this to someone who's absent today. Where if I'm at a 2, I'm saying, I get it. I have a few questions, but I think I'm on the right track. And if you're saying you're at a 1, you're saying I'm going to need a lot more support before I get there because I am going to get there. But right now I still have a lot of questions. So then they decide by themselves. You could add in a poll question, an on-the-fly poll question right there. But I usually have my students just kind of show me on their chest with a 3, or 2, or a 1. And then the next slide is your slideshow. So when I was working with Nearpod, I would I wanted my students to be able to have a differentiated lesson. But one thing with Nearpod is that all the slides are going to be on the same page. So if I flip to the next slide, everyone's iPad will go to the next slide, which is great when you're doing a virtual field trip and you don't want them to hang out in Manhattan, but you want them to come back. It lets you do that. So this is a great way to get around that, is using the slideshow feature. They went to whatever slide matched their number and took a screenshot of that slide. And then it brought up the editing tools, and they were able to partner up with someone who had chosen that same task, and they're able to edit it. So on the slideshow, it had 3 different images ranging in difficulties, but still meeting the standard of having to identify how this represents one half. And then they worked with partners who had chosen the same one, and they edit and they shade in, and they're cutting apart and moving things around. And then when we're all done, we move over to the draw it slide. So it's able to be differentiated without having to stop and then give them a student-based code. I can just do it right there. And then it also helps students, because some of them are like, oh, I'm a 3. But in your head, no, you're not. You're a 1. But it's defeating if I go over and tell them, sweetie, you're not a 3. They then get to this point, and if they choose to do a 3, fantastic. They're being challenged, and they're going to work with someone who's going to push them. But if they can say, oh, you know what, I'm not a 3, they could use the slideshow feature to go down to a 2. And try that first, and then come back to a 3, or go down to a 1. So they have that, and then they can upload their screenshot in the next slide. And so the whole lesson then ends with an exit ticket using an open-ended question that asks them questions about the lesson and their level of understanding about halves. So that is the lesson in a very big nutshell.
Great lesson. I think you're going to get a lot of hits on that lesson, and thank you for sharing that with our listeners. I think that's fantastic. Brenda, did you have a question about homeschooling?
I did.
I know you did.
I'm always interested. So I don't know if you've ever had any children leave your school for homeschool situations, but I was wondering what your opinion is on Nearpod and how that would fit in with the homeschool environment.
I think it's an incredible resource. I've had students who have left to go to be homeschooled, and also have had students who had to take a break from school and they had to be homebound. And Nearpod, from a teacher's point of view, I can send you those lessons, those student-paced lessons. But if I was homeschooling my student at home, it really gives you a really large resource bank that have vetted lessons that align with standards. And now you can search for lessons by standard. So I know my sisters were homeschooled once they got to middle school and high school. And I cannot imagine trying to teach my child all those lessons. So Nearpod has all these lessons that are right there that are very engaging. It's so much better than sitting there with a book and going through page by page by page. They're very engaging. They have those simulations. They have the virtual field trips and the rigorous questions. I mean, really, I think if there was ever a tool to use for homeschooling, this is one you should definitely have, because it is so engaging and gives them a real world perspective on what they're learning, instead of just maybe going through a book that has all the information in there. So also, one thing they've just added were the virtual explorations, and one is the college tours. So that's really interesting if you have high schoolers who are being homeschooled and high schoolers who are in traditional schools. It actually takes you on a virtual tour through different college campuses. So you're able to visit Penn State, or you're able to visit different colleges without actually having to go there. So I thought that was really interesting.
A ton of money.
You know how much I would have saved?
You're done, but I still got 2 more. I got one that's going on college tours right now as we speak.
Although I did enjoy the college tours very much.
You did?
I did. I loved them.
God, that's so great. That's going to save when it's my turn to take my kid on the college tours. I'm going to take her virtually. Hey, we're going to virtually go on college.
That's right.
Then once you find one, then you can actually go visit. You can narrow down your search.
Right.
Yeah. They have a lesson that is actually going through a small, medium, or large campus.
Oh, that's awesome.
They're able to see what is it like to be on a small campus, and what's really best for you and your personality. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was interesting. Maybe you wouldn't have ever thought to go to a small school, or maybe you thought you would go to a small school, but you really might be better at a larger school. Mm-hmm. It exposes them to those different types of schools.
Those are things that I did not think of when I went to college.
I know. Well, yeah.
I was like, where'd I get accepted? Yeah, there. Okay, I can afford to go there. That looks good. And it wasn't until actually I started thinking about it that I was like, I probably should have visited this campus before I signed and was here. And
Found out a little bit.
Yeah, ate the food,
where it was located. Yeah.
Okay, so I have two more really important questions. One is, what are you reading? Jessica Solano, 2017 Florida Teacher of the Year. What are you reading this summer? That's your own professional development. What's on your list?
Well, I'm making myself finish it. I've already started it and then I get distracted, but it's absolutely phenomenal. Mathematical Mindsets by Joe Bowler.
Of course.
Oh my goodness, so good.
That is number one, I think. Yeah. If you're teaching math, that's one of the best.
Mm-hmm. Well, right from the beginning, she talks about math trauma, and it is so true. I have 8-year-olds that come into my classroom that say, "My mom's not a math person. I'm not a math person." And they just like it's not something you can pass down.
Yeah, it's not genetic. It's not genetic.
So it's so funny, but I had such great ideas in there. Another book that I'm really trying to go through is Growth Mindset Coach. And so that I love Growth Mindset. That book, it actually has it broken down month by month by month, different things you can do to implement growth mindset in your classroom. Another book that I would look at is Peak. I've read part of that and I might want to go through that again. It's talking about how do you get to be the best at what you do? And that's practice, deliberate, focused practice and feedback. There's another book I would definitely recommend. We started a teacher leadership group in our district. And so we had our teacher leaders read a book called Practice Perfect by Doug Lamont. And so that kind of goes off of his previous book, which is Teach Like a Champion. Mm-hmm. Definitely a book that you have to have in your library if you're a teacher. But Practice Perfect basically is using that mindset of practice and to incorporate different aspects of that Teach Like a Champion piece. So we were talking about conducting role plays and working through situations instead of just going in blind and knowing, okay, I've got to do this, but actually practicing getting feedback. So those are the ones on my list right now. I'm sure there's going to be even more.
Good list. Great list. Those will be all in our show notes with links to purchase those on Amazon. We will put those affiliate links on show notes for everyone, and they'll be on our website, of course. Those are great recommendations. I'll probably download them tonight and just start reading and just put them in my queue. Thinking back, you've been teaching for 9 years. If a new teacher, you probably get student teachers kind of come through your classroom or through your school, or if you don't, like thinking back to you as a new teacher 9 years ago, what advice would you give that new teacher or yourself as a new teacher if you could go back?
I would say that you need to create a mission statement for yourself, your why for your teaching.
Start with why, Simon Sinek.
Yes, you need to have that why, because within the first week, you are at some point going to feel defeated, and then the first month and the first semester. And by the end, if you don't refocus on your why, you are so easily going to be susceptible to quitting. I know that there was definitely a time with me where I was about in my third year of teaching, and I remember thinking, what can I do with an education degree? Because I cannot come back. I'm not doing this. I cannot do it. And thankfully, there was another teacher, a more experienced teacher, who was talking to me and brought me back to why I got into this in the first place. So something that I like to share with teachers is putting why in this perspective of WHY. Why do we do what we do? And we need to know, like, what impact do I want to have? Do you have a heart for what you're teaching and the kids that you have, and always having a yet. You can't just assume, oh, I'm 10 years in, I'm 15 years in, I've made it, I'm using the same lesson plans and doing the same thing, and I really mastered my craft. There always needs to be a yet. So I would find something that you have not mastered yet and make that your focus and your goal and align it to how it's going to impact your students academically and personally.
Oh, that's so great.
Great advice.
I was telling Brenda, I love Simon Sinek, Start With Why.
Yes.
And I've recently taken the second book, Find Your Why, and we have now created, our team has professional development for teachers specifically on how to find their school why, and then their department why, and then their individual why. And so our team at the university does that for schools, because oftentimes they're like that. They're like, why are you bringing all this technology and blended learning? Why are we doing that? Why are you bringing all these Nearpod things and iPads? And I'm like, you should know why.
Right.
I'm helping you support your why, but if you don't know what your why is, then there's no point in us keep going. So those are two books that I would definitely, if listeners, our podcast listeners haven't, I would definitely read Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And then if you're looking for for how to find your why, then the workbook is Find Your Why. But I agree with you, because I think teachers, we have some of the hardest jobs ever. And we did not start teaching because we thought we were going to hit the lottery. Like that this was going to be, we were going to be like in 10 years, we were going to be tenure track, and we got this great pension, you know, we get summers off. Like those are all these funny misnomers that like people think, oh, you're a teacher, you have all the, no way, man. A teacher's job does not end at 3:30 or 3 o'clock or on last Thursday. Your job, you stopped getting paid last Thursday. But teachers like continues. You will continue to learn over the summer, and they're constantly thinking. And if you're, and I imagine that they're like me, teachers out there like me, as I wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm like, that was a great idea. I was just thinking about something in my dream, and I write it down. I'm like, I'm going to totally put that in my class next week. And everything is about, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? It's always there in the back of your head of how you're going to meet the needs of your students. And that's what amazing teachers do. And so I think, thank you for sharing your book list with us.
Oh yeah, no problem. I when I first started teaching, I had to work 2 jobs, and I was working. I know, but you do it. You don't do it for the money. So I remember I was working as a waitress at a restaurant, and I was telling one of the cooks, "Oh yeah, I really got to go home because I've got to grade some papers, some of my 3rd grade papers." And he said, "What is it, like coloring worksheet?" Like,
what?
It's really like, I know it's way more complicated than that. It really is an intellectually complex craft that you have to put a lot of effort into. My husband really has just been blown away as he started to understand more and more of the teaching world, that it is way more than 9 to 5 or 8 to 3, whatever your schedule is. It is 100% of the time. All the time.
So, you're just constantly doing it. But really quick, I'd like to ask about the Florida Teacher of the Year. How did you get that? What launched you up to that status? That's amazing. And that's a wonderful honor.
It is. It was certainly life-changing. We had a lot of things going on at one time, and it's not anything you ever expect to happen to you. So how it happens is you get selected as Teacher of the Year from your school, and then at least this is how it is in Polk County. So you get selected by your school, then your school puts you up for the district. In Polk County, you have to submit an application. And then they have a group of judges that goes through all the applications, narrows it down to finalists. And then they have a large event where they announce the finalists and then announce a winner for Polk County. So, and at that level, we have so many incredible businesses that support education in Polk County. So the winner gets a free car. I got a free master's. I got free Disney tickets. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. So you think like, that's amazing. How much better could it get? And then, so all the districts then put up their Teacher of the Year for the Florida Teacher of the Year program. Again, you fill out another application, but you also have to submit a video of you teaching. And so then there's another panel of judges that go through that. They announce the top 5, and they do surprise visits to your classroom. So the Florida Commissioner of Education came and surprised me in my classroom with this huge $15,000 check, because all the finalists were going to get $15,000. And I know my kids were like, "You're rich! I can't believe you have that much money." So that was exciting. And then you go up for interviews. And then after all that, they have a huge gala event, which is beautiful. And they announce the winner there at the Hard Rock in Orlando. So that was really incredible then to be selected, because I was also 9 months pregnant at the time, because I was not planning on being Florida Teacher of the Year. So that was, I had my son a week later. We're buying a house. There's just a bunch of things going on. But what's nice with being Florida Teacher of the Year is that you get a year to be on sabbatical, and you get to travel around the state working with other schools, working with teachers, visiting the Florida Department of Education and meeting with the different departments there. And then by far the best thing, I think, is really getting to meet the other state Teachers of the Year. They're just so passionate about what they do. And the other district Teachers of the Year in Florida, the same thing. You have the top passionate educators that are so like-minded and not just wanting to talk about issues in education, but wanting to find solutions to the problem. So that's been really empowering now, going back into the classroom and having this huge resource in them. And then everything I learned that year, I feel like I'm not the same person I was a year ago or 2 years ago. So not this past July, but the July before that, I was selected and then was the current Teacher of the Year from July to June. So this past year, I've been in my classroom while the Tammy Jerkins, who's the 2018 Florida Teacher of the Year, has had her time on sabbatical.
So great.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations, you and Tammy. I think
That's amazing. What impact has becoming Teacher of the Year, the Florida Teacher of the Year, had on you personally?
And professionally.
And professionally, yes. Personally, it's helped me be able to understand that just because you're asking for help does not mean that you are incapable of doing something. And this past year was very interesting in that I had a newborn baby and I was traveling, and I had to be able to lean on my husband and our family to help in those times when I wasn't there, and then understanding how our roles together were going to work. And also personally, I think I get to see my students every year. I'm pushing them to embrace growth mindset and to master what they haven't learned yet, and to take chances. And this was an opportunity for me to go into their shoes. I was not in public speaking before this. You kind of just pluck a teacher out and say, hey, you're a great teacher. Now go speak to thousands of people. It's very intimidating, and it is quite a learning curve. And I felt that, just like I see my students, by the time January came around, I felt that confidence and that ability to really make it more automatic and not have to work so hard at it. But unless you really are tracking that progress and you have a desire to reach that goal, it just looks like a bunch of hard work. So I felt like I could connect with my students better. And then professionally, because I was around so many amazing teachers, and because you're forced to be more reflective. It's one thing to say, oh, this is why I'm teaching, but to really get down to the nitty gritty about why you are teaching, especially when you don't get paid much and the hours don't make sense. And it is hard. You have to understand what that why is. And that has been really powerful. And getting to that point, and then also seeing, being really honest with myself about what have not been doing well at. And one thing I had not been doing well at was that family engagement piece. And so when I was exposed to that in DC with the other state teachers of the year, I came back determined to change that. When you're engaging families, they're able to know what it is that their students need to learn, where they are on that track toward reaching that goal, and how to help them. So what I thought with parents coming on field trips or volunteering in my classroom, I have families that are engaged, but that's not family engagement. So I would do Facebook Live sessions with my kids and their families, where they'd actually kind of virtually come into a classroom and be engaged in a math lesson, and then did home visits. And it really just completely changed my focus, still also holding on to, I need to teach to the standards and not lose focus there. But you also kind of have to spread yourself into another direction of saying, this is really important to me. And if I have my families on board and feeling as if they can have an impact on their students' learning, I think my students will be so much more successful. And it definitely showed this year, for sure.
That's awesome. And you've made it a mission of yours, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
I have to say that family engagement piece is so critical, and I thank you for taking that on as your mission, and you and the other, I think, state teachers of the year who have been talking about this and have kind of brought that to the home front. I'm hearing it more and more out in the field,
Awesome.
which is good, because I don't think we had in the past, but I don't know that it's made its way all the way through. And I, as a parent, my experience is different because I'm a parent in education, and so I know what I would like, and so I think I try to push teachers that unfortunately have my children to be like, hey, what about this? So thank you, and thank the other teachers for doing that, because I think that you guys spreading the word and really, especially because you had said that at your school now you kind of have this new mix of students that are now in the classroom with you, and really including those parents to help because they may not know. It's great to know that there's a test coming up on Friday. How am I going to help them study?
Right.
And a parent, most parents don't say, hey, Mrs. Solano, can you give me some tools? Like that, most parents don't say that, right? They're not begging you for resources or anything like that. So by you saying, this is where your student is at, this is where they need help, and I'm going to give you this set of tools. This Facebook Live session is going to be available to you. If you can't make it, here's a Nearpod that you can work through with your kid. Here's the answers, by the way. Like, that's the one thing I don't like is the teachers never give me the answers. So I'm like, I don't know if that's the right answer. Like, it looks good to me, but like, and God forbid I'm not home, Grandma can't help, like, because Grandma's like, this new math.
Oh, the new math. I hate that. Yeah. Oh, no, that's so true, because even at third grade, do you know how embarrassing it is for families to come up and say, I don't know how to do the third grade thing. And it's not that they don't know how to do it. It is presented differently. And
exactly.
If you don't practice something for 30 years, 20 years, of course you're going to lose it. But yes, I completely agree. And I think it comes down to our mindsets. You really have to focus on, what do you really believe about your students' families? You have to believe that all of them want the best for their kids, and that you believe that all of them have the capacity to help their kids. But the responsibility is on us as teachers to get them those resources. We can't, like you said, we can't just wait for them to knock on our doors on our time when I'm there for my planning period. And after that bell is done, it's 7:00 at night. You can't be messaging me for the spelling words or for something else. Sometimes you do just need to be flexible and say, hey, I'm going to do what it takes to help you be supportive of your kids. And I'm sure that parents struggle with that a lot. I'm seeing that with my daughter, and especially this last year where I wasn't in school with her, and having to see, man, this is what it's like as a parent to not be in the school every single day with my kids. And we really need to do a better job. I still need to do a much better job of keeping that line of communication open. But it is challenging when you have 50 students, in high school, hundreds of students. How do you do that? So
I think one of the things I think of, this is totally off topic. You can edit this out if you want, Brenda, but I feel like, in my experience, and I have three kids, college, high school, and elementary. And I taught Brenda's kids. So,
nice.
That's how we met. And so I feel like one of the things that schools just historically need to do is find one place where this information is going to be communicated to me as a parent. Because what I found is that the communication is coming and is housed in different places. And so I get an email that says, hey, this is the homework and this is what's going on. And then I'm like, okay, where is this worksheet that's magically? And then I'm like, oh, I got to go to this other place to find the worksheet because it's not where I logged in to get this email from. And then it's like, oh yeah, it's not on that website, it's on this website. There's one that has the grades, and there's one that has the digital textbooks, and there's one. It's like, can you just pick one place?
Right.
I don't care what it is. Just give me one place. just and have that link to. And if you're gonna send me an email, just put the link. Like, here's the link to the stuff for today or whatever. Like, just give me one place, because as a parent, I feel like, and I have. It's not like for parents who have one kid, maybe it's easier. I don't know. I don't talk to those parents. I guess I don't know. I don't know those parents. I know that there's other parents like me who have multiple kids, and this is my. I have one who's like 10. He's 10. So the other ones, the bigger ones, I don't worry too much about anymore. But like, when they were in elementary school, when you have like 2 or 3 kids in elementary school and middle school, you're like, I don't know where everything is. Like, I don't know.
Right.
You have your digital textbooks. Where's the password again for that? Like, I don't know.
Right.
And I just feel like school administrators, and I do this when I teach my classes, you need to do a better job of just having one place. Not every teacher have one place. As a school, you need to agree to have one place to kind of house everything. That's my soapbox. You can totally get that out.
Maybe you need to design a program that you
there
can
are great programs out there
that will do everything.
Yes. I mean, they're not necessarily your SIS system, but it's a place where the parents can log in. They can the digital textbook resources can be there. I mean,
awesome.
It could even be Google. It could be like the free stuff. Like, it doesn't have to be something you pay for. I'm just saying, stop. I get an email from the gradebook place with homework, and then I get one from the school SIS system from homework, and I'm like, this other mom calls me, she's like, why didn't I get tonight's homework? I'm like, oh, because it didn't get mailed from this one, it got mailed from this one, and she's not on that mailing list. And
oh my goodness,
it's silly, and I don't know, there's no rhyme or reason to it. And again, it's not just one kid that I've experienced this with, because I have multiple kids. So I feel like just schools just need to do a better way of communicating, because
and you need to make it simple for the parents.
You got to make it simple for us. I don't need 27 logins.
No.
Right.
You know?
Well, and they need to get a pulse of what parents are feeling, like having some type of forum where you can come and say,
yes,
hey, I think we need to have one place for all this information. Here's our ideas.
Yes.
You know, not just, we're the school. We know what's best.
Yes.
But here's what you're going to do.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I understand that there is a certain sense of that, but at the end of the day, you know, when I have other parents going like, do you know what the homework is tonight? Because I didn't get my kid didn't write it down right, and I feel like this, you know, there was only one thing written in the homework notebook. That can't be right. And no, it's not right. There's 3 things that they have to do tonight. So yeah, I feel like that's just my soapbox when it comes to parent-family engagement, is that I think that, you know, I think you're right. We need to assume that all parents want to help. Whether they have the time or the talent or whatever is another story. But I think all parents do want that for their kids. They want to be able to help their kids. But I can honestly say that as a parent, I don't know how to do that unless you as the teacher are telling me what's happening during the day. Because then my kid comes home and he's like, well, that's not the teacher. The teacher didn't show me how to do the math that way. And
I hate them. Like, don't tell your parents that. Do it however you can. Miss Solano did not teach it to us this way.
And therefore, you know nothing. And I was like, but I taught math. I don't know what you're talking about. But with the Common Core, I mean, there are these new amazing ways of teaching kids how to think about math, which were not when I was teaching math. That we didn't have those. And so I think that you're right. I tell my son, you're right. I'm not teaching you the same way, but we're going to get the same answer. I'm going to show you a different way. And he's like, well, that's not the way it's going to be. That's not how it's going to be on the test. Right. So I don't want to learn your way, Mom.
My teacher will be mad if I do it that way.
Yeah. So I just say, send me what you got, and we're good to go. But thank you again for all your time and talent and expertise. Okay. So you have some questions. How do we get a hold of her?
That's right. So if our listeners want to get in touch with you, what is the best way?
So my Twitter handle would be 2017 FLTOY, Florida Teacher of the Year. And then my email address is that same, 2017 FLTOY@gmail.com.
Nice and easy.
And are you going to ISTE, or are you going to any conferences or speaking at anything coming up over the next 3 to 6 months that you know of?
I am not going to ISTE, and I so badly want to, but I'm not. I will be in Vegas. Actually, there's a teacher leadership conference this summer in July. So I'm not speaking there, but I will be there. And it's sponsored by the National Network of State Teachers of the Year. And then I also will be speaking on Nearpod in Brevard County in August. As well as speaking on family engagement. That was a focus I really had this past year. So Teacher to Teacher came and did a really fantastic job on a video where they highlighted doing home visits and making an effort to engage parents. And so that I'm actually speaking on that in September.
Oh, great. Okay.
Awesome.
So,
well, thank you so much.
You can listen to our episode. We have a pre-ISTE episode, and then we'll have a post-ISTE episode. So
nice.
we'll do it all for you as if we're talking to you, and then hopefully other people will listen.
That would be
for
our
Jessica.
Goal. She couldn't come.
Yeah, this is for Jessica because she couldn't make it. So we're gonna do as much. Brenda and I last night went and did our whole schedule. So it was a little overwhelming.
It is very overwhelming.
At one point, we had to be like, okay, that's Monday. Let's take a break. We've gone through all the Monday schedule. We took a break and had to have
a lot.
Some chips. And
I can.
We need to get some ice cream. Is what I mean.
And then we were like, okay, let's do Tuesday. Okay, all right, Tuesday. I don't even think I got to Wednesday, to be honest with you. So our Monday, Tuesday schedules are done, but we're excited to have our pre and post ISTE podcast will happen shortly thereafter. So Thank you. Well, thank you for spending this time with us today. We really appreciate it. It's been great getting to know you.
It's such a great speaker. It's so nice to be able to listen to you all the time. It's very enjoyable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can tell you've done a lot of public speaking.
Yes. No, thank you. Thank you for having me. I love getting to talk about things that I love, and I love Nearpod. So I'm totally honored to be able to have gotten the chance to come on here and speak and hopefully spread the word about how we can use Nearpod to make such a much bigger impact on our colleagues and our students.
I think you've done a great job. You've been a great ambassador for Nearpod. Excellent. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And have a great rest of your weekend and the great rest of your summer.
Oh, thank you. You guys too. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you guys. This is great.
Hey, my Tech Toolbelt friends. This is Brenda, and I have some exciting news for you. Nearpod has offered up a code for a gold subscription for 3 months. Now, this code can only be redeemed up to 100 times and must be redeemed by August 31st, 2018. So are you ready for the code? This code is NP-MYTT18. So the code again is N as in Nancy, P as in Paul, dash, M as in Mary, Y as in you, T as in Tech, and T as in Toolbelt, 18. So, what are you waiting for? Try it out. We're excited to hear how you're doing with Nearpod. Thank you so much for joining us today at the MyTech Toolbelt podcast. Now, if this episode has helped you, please pass it on to a friend that also may enjoy it. Thanks so much for getting the word out about the MyTech Toolbelt podcast. And we're out.